incredible thing that God gave us to make our lives easy. The only problem is that we don't see it. We don't see it, we don't know how to work with it, but it's powerful, so we have to take care, of it. And a worldview is formed when we are very little, so that leads us to the conclusion that we have to be very careful how we raise our children. And I guess you Americans do much better than we Latin Americans on that. I grew up in I went to Bible school and we lived in a campus like this. We all lived together. And I always got marvelous about how careful Americans are with their children at a very early age. I don't know how perfect could it be, but considering what we Latin Americans do is just, it's something amazing. And it's very important, because anything you can teach a child at a very early age, and we should never underestimate a girl or a boy, that will stay there forever, probably. A worldview forces a person to find out what life is all about. It's always intuition. They learn everything by their own intelligence. They realize everything. Okay, so we can help them, to understand the world they live in. It's good to have traditions. It's good to have a culture that may reflect truths. Discipline is fine. For instance, a child that plays all day long with the TV or playing games that I've seen lately is just a matter to destroy his mind, his spirit. I've seen kids, addicted to those things, and I can't believe why people do that. Maybe not. It was not intentional, but it ended up in that. So we have to do our job. We have to do great things with little ones, and probably we can find nice things to do that may reflect truths in the best way. All examples are good examples. Kids, try not to allow your kids to be rebellious with you. I don't know how come that is developed sometimes, but I found people struggling with kids who don't want to do anything, who don't want to obey, who don't want to go. It might have a reason, But kids normally come very, happy to do things with you if you allow them to join you. I remember a time when we had to go and visit a little kid at the hospital in Guatemala, and we had to take the whole afternoon. So I convinced my kids that it was going to be a nice thing to do. Juanito is alone, is by himself at the hospital, and he needs someone to stay with him the whole afternoon. So let's take toys and candies and things like that. And they came with me, and they spent a nice afternoon with him. They were so happy at the hospital. The hospital was just empty, and I was, kind of concerned for them not to get any kind of disease inside of the hospital or something like that. But it was just the thing to do it one Sunday, and I remember that next Sunday I didn't think much about Juanito, because Juanito was okay. But my kids were ready at a certain hour with the toys, and what time do we go to Juanito? The kids are that way, Don't say, oh, no, forget it, I'm tired. That's the worst thing you can do. Get tired later, Yeah. Don't let your child to think that, oh, no, Dad doesn't want to do anything. Mama is always tired. When they come to that point, it means that you're not doing your job. You know, it might be hard, but that's the task the Lord gives us when we have kids. So they form their worldview. Everything that is going to be natural for them has to be done then. You know, disciplines are great. You know, to lift up their spirits by the discipline, great stories, great things to do. If you are going to be compassionate with someone, do it with your child. Let the child see what you do, you know, see how it works, see the fruits. He will never forget it. Those things will be in his mind forever. Okay? Never leave them at home with a babysitter and you are more comfortable doing your own things. Not necessarily works that way. Okay? Then a worldview, you know, it's powerful, and any idea that the child can realize during his or her early ages will be there. It cannot be changed. Remember that. It cannot be changed. It's a storage in a place that is sacred, and it's not meant to be changed, you know. So the more truths we implanted in that area, the better, you know. He will struggle with you know, less with practicing God's truth. But on the other hand, if we don't help them to do that, we will have to start working later. You know, remember that we are the first layer of the culture, our family, but the rest of the world still have their own form of influence. My recommendation would be try not to let them watch too much TV. You know, and there are some parents that connect the girl or the boy to the TV, and they learn a lot of things just watching TV. When you say, "Why is this little kid so rebellious?" Well, that's the reason. Probably, you know. So be jealous. You know, I remember that someone one day taught us about how jealous were Jewish parents about the education of their children in all times in the Old Testament. And it's really amazing because your children's worldview is your responsibility. That's something we should preach at the church, and then we will be able to finish many problems at the same time. Okay, then, because from the culture would inevitably invade your house. It does, you know. Culture invades even the church. I remember that when I was a kid, I don't know, I didn't go to the evangelical church, but as Catholic, I remember when I was a child, there were not electrical guitars. And when they came up, it was in the times of the hippies and Woodstock people and people like Carlos Santana and all that. And I remember all parents at that moment saw electrical guitars as a very, very evil thing. You know? And I don't think, I like electrical guitars, you know, but it's interesting to see that today it's really hard to see a church where they don't have an electrical guitar. And if it was just for some music now, you can hear rock music and all that. We believers did not invent that music, we didn't invent those things. Those things came from the world, you know, and they shape up our worldview. So let's be careful. We have to be careful with everything we accept at home. We accept through the media, through the TV, you know. It might make us strange people. It will surely do, you know. But what can we do? We cannot just, reconcile with the world and try to be like them in order to be more normal people, No, we shouldn't, okay? And if we are consistent, our children will be happy. But if we are inconsistent, we will destroy the process. Okay? Then, there are many things that, today, we just grew up in our culture, and today we might be dealing with things that are in our worldview that are a kind of hard things to deal with that do not come from God. It might be the way we treat women in some societies, and the way we discriminate other people, What we have to understand is that worldviews produce consequences. Always do. We are going to see this a little bit more closer with some examples that I'm going to put there. Okay? It's not that I just believe something. It's not even what in fact, you shouldn't be able even to know what you have in your worldview. You just operate from that, and you are producing the products of that without noticing it. You just think that life is that way. Like the mother who doesn't know why the boy doesn't wash these dishes, because he's a boy. It's natural. Have you noticed that? A boy doesn't wash dishes because he's a boy. It's life, So, we are going to do more about that. Ideas have consequences, okay? But the ideas that are in our worldview, okay? Which is different. There are many ideas. If you go to church, you are going to hear new ideas, okay? If you are not able to put them in your worldview, those ideas would be nice, but they won't produce consequences. Maybe all of us get enthusiastic about something new, and we'll do it one day, the next day less, and from here to a month, we forgot it, because it's not part of our worldview, okay? How we change a worldview? We change it with discipleship, biblical discipleship. And discipleship, the very word of discipleship comes from discipline, probably. And it means that to change a behavior with a worldview requires discipline, commitment. And once you do it once and two and three, 4 times, you fight against that until you go to the other side. Once you get it as a worldview, it won't go back. Have you seen that movie, The List of Schindler? Have you seen it? Have you seen that movie? That movie is about a man who's a businessman. He's a German guy who sees the war as a great opportunity to get rich. How? I mean, abusing Jewish people, taking their factories and their wealth, and use it for him to make a lot of money. So he saw the Jewish people suffering, but I mean, because of his worldview, he didn't feel it. This is very important. He didn't feel it the way he should. He probably knew that's wrong, but because it's not me, I won't get in trouble trying to do anything else. Well, the movie is about him who decides to, for some reason, to protect this Jewish group that works in his business, and they are a kind of 800 people. So it is hard for him to run everywhere trying to avoid them to be taken to the extermination fields. So he worked hard doing this, and then all the money he had in gold and things, he began to invest it in order to protect them. Finally, I guess he gets poor, but he bought the 800 people, and the war comes to an end. And the last night, he is with all this Jewish group. They decide to honor him. And then while he was saying goodbye, he began to explain why he did that, as you know. But all of a sudden, he got caught in the idea. And then a huge repentment came on him. Amazing. And he began to say, look, with this piece of gold in my pen, I could have bought 2 more. And with that car, I could have bought 4 more. And why I didn't do it? And all of a sudden, his mind changed the way he saw reality immediately, in a very dramatic way. And he could see truth, something that he couldn't do before. And he was just crying and weeping, you know. That man cannot go back to do the same thing. Because there was a change in his mindset. I mean, his worldview was dramatically changed. Okay, I think something like that has to happen to us in many ways, in many things, in many values that we probably didn't think about. Okay, so because we want truth in our worldview, we want our worldview to guide our decisions in the right way. Okay, that's hard to do, but that's a commandment, you know. The Lord told us, go and make disciples. And discipleship means I will work with this guy until he's another person. And that's not easy to do because I have to work with me first. You know, I have to watch. Not always, sometimes we take for granted that some people need help. And for some reason, I get to think that I am the one who can help, but it's not always that way. You know, it also to live the kingdom of God means that we are constantly confronting us with the truth of the Lord, and we never get to the point that we are in the highest point and we don't need to change anything. We just need to help other people. I don't think you ever get to that point, you know. So you are always in the struggle with something else. Okay? Well, let me give you some examples about how truth produces life and lies produces death. Okay. Well, let's say some more things. The fruits of death are oppression, poverty, injustice, corruption. So wherever you see them, you have to think that there is something interesting. You take a plane, you land in a place, and when you get into the first city or whatever, and something shocks you, and you see, for instance, injustice, corruption, that's what you see, okay? That's what you see. What you don't see is the truth or lie that is behind that, because that's spiritual. It's in the mind of people, okay? But you have to think that it's real. And that's the stronghold, you know. And sometimes you get money to help the outside things, and you pour and pour money into that, thousands of dollars, probably millions, and nothing changes. Okay, no wonder. The problem is not there. The problem is underneath. It's in the mind of people. You know, I tell you this because I have worked in an organization that did this for decades, you know. And if you want, you can you can see the story of many international organizations that ask money to donors to take to poor countries. They never solve anything. You know, of course they don't wonder why, because it's a good business probably for them too. So if the poor is always poor, it's good. But it's interesting to see that in some places, look, let me tell you this. I was working in some places of Bolivia where we had children with a high rate of undernourishment. Okay, so we measured that. And one of the ideas we got is that if we help them to improve their income, we can fight this problem of undernourishment better, right? Do you think is that idea? Sounds logical, right? It's interesting because we did. We helped them to make business, to better in agriculture, in many ways. And certainly they got a better income. Months later, when we measured the undernourishment, it grew instead of going low. You know, why? Because we underestimated the worldview. Because in their worldview, when they get more money, you know, it's not exactly, what they do is not exactly what we would do. You know, for instance, in my case, if I get more money, I will probably use it for the well-being of my family. But not they. You know, so what do you do with your money has a lot to do with your worldview, with truths of or lies that lead to important decisions. You know, there was this guy in Guatemala. That story told me this same man. We made a project about vegetable gardens, something like that, you know. And he gave us his house and a piece of land where we worked. And there were many men in the community. And this man was very smart, you know. He learned everything, and he gave his place because he wanted to take advantage of that. So he did. He became a nice and very productive man. He took all the lessons he knew. He took all the vegetables he produced, and with a lot of work, he took them to the near city and sell them for months. Then he got money to buy a very small car. He bought the car and was able to carry more vegetables. And after a couple years, he bought a truck. And he was the first man who had a truck in that village. You know? It was amazing. Next thing you could see is a man walking in the only road they had in the village, you know, with a different kind of walk, you know. And smoking a cigar, which he never smoked probably before, you know. And going and coming, and my friends told me, you know, and I saw him walking, and I got close to him and to talk, and he told me this, you know, I like to have your advice. I've been thinking about something. And he said, what is that? He said, you know that I have worked hard, and now I am prosperous, and I have a new truck, and everything is going fine. Do you think it's time to change my wife? Yeah, that was the question. That was the question. You never know a person until they get money. Right? Right? In my experience, that's true. You never get to know a man until you give him a lot of money. Then you know what is he made of. The worldview will become real probably in many ways, you know. And have you heard the stories about people who got a lot of money and destroy the family? Probably. Some people may say it doesn't make sense because they have money and the opportunity to do good things, but you underestimate the worldview, the power of a worldview. In Bolivia, there are interesting things that you have to think about the worldview. For instance, the value of money. You don't know it really. So when you educate a child, you have to teach them how to deal with that. That's very important. For instance, that's the reason I tell you it's very good for you to teach your children to be compassionate, to give others when they are very little. So the day they have more money, they will probably use it more, in better ways. That's probably in Bolivia, we have a problem with authority, and the same thing, all guys are nice, friends in the office are nice. Even we are very good friends and we spend years, working together until some of them, are put in high position. And they have power and authority. You can't imagine how people can change immediately. I remember a friend of mine who told me, I went to talk to this guy who was a very nice friend of us, and he told me, and he said, I would better talk to another one because you don't know who he is now. It's incredible. It's amazing. Authority is a big deal in many countries. What they think about. What would you do if you had power? What would you do if you had a lot of money? Probably you don't know yourself, but your worldview will come to, on the table. Okay, then talking about worldview is very important because if we have truth in our worldview, it will produce life. Life, as we have to understand it, is biblical prosperity, redemption. God is going to make the chicken alive again. Okay, many things will be healing, restoring relationships. I have a friend who was a pastor. And this guy was a very nice guy. But he was what in the American culture called a loser. Boy, this man was a pity, I liked to see him, but every time I saw him, he was in such a ridiculous situation. He had no money in his pocket. But he was so nice. And he was a pastor, and it was the same story every year. And that's what he says. I never had money. I never could help my family. And I don't understand why. And I talked to him about one of these things of biblical worldview, which is, I'll tell you this story later. Okay, so I don't want to ruin the thing. Yeah, I won't, let's go. Then, when we arrive to a country and we see, for instance, corruption, okay, that's what is on the surface, right? But the problem is underneath, where we don't see. It's in the mind of people. So be smart. Okay? If we see injustice, if we see poverty, those things are the fruits. Yeah? Ideas produce consequences. So I have to work more with people, not much with the environment. Okay? Okay? Sounds logical according to what we are saying? Make sense? Okay. Another thing is that because man is in sin, so what is normal what is normal is brokenness. Brokenness is the normal state of life. You understand? When I don't see brokenness, we manage this thing in different ways. When we see brokenness, we say, how this thing happened? Mostly we ask that, but that's the wrong question. That's the normal state of life. When we see people who are happy, are prosperous according to God's will, is when we have to ask and say, how this happened? You understand? You understand what I mean? Because when God created man, what was normal was biblical prosperity. That was normal. But because of sin, it's not normal anymore. It's something that comes only after redemption. Okay? And that's not an easy thing to do. What is normal is to find corruption, injustice, poverty, suffering. That's normal. Okay? You see? Okay. So that is very important. I have noticed in time that we believers are not well educated in the theology of sin. We have to understand sin. When we take care of our children, we don't understand how sin works. We might be a good family. We might be very educated people. But we have to understand that every little one comes in sin. And we have to help them to leave that state to a redemptive state. It's not that little kids just grow and everything is nice. No, he will naturally develop the tendency to go astray. Because we are in sin. That's the normal thing. You understand, what I'm saying? So we have to work against that immediately. I tell parents, I remember at a time when a lady at the school came to me and she was angry because something my child did. And what she said was something terrible. I never imagined my son doing that. And the natural response is, no, my child cannot do that. Forget it. He can do worse. You have to believe what they say. Because we are in sin. Do you understand? If you get a lot of money in church, I'm going to tell you this because I'm a good friend of you, and probably we won't see each other the rest of our lives, so I will say it right now. If there is a lot of money in church, bear in mind that we are in sin. That money will tempt someone. And it will do. It's not that it might, it will do. Probably you've been doing that for a long time and you just thought about that. Because what is normal is sin. Okay? So, broken societies are the normal state of life. What is marvelous is to arrive to a country where you see things in order, restored, redeemed. And you say, how did this happen? How? Who did this? How God worked in the past? Because this is amazing. This is life. Truth came here, and changed people's minds for the mercy of the Lord. In some way, it happened. Okay? But that is not normal. You can lose it if you are not careful. Because the normal tendency of people will always be going into sin. Okay, so that's important. Yeah? We need to renew our theology of sin if we want to understand this better. Yeah? Okay. Lies in our worldview produce bondage, slavery. Okay? Lies in our worldview, once they are installed in our worldview, made us subjected to serve the devil instead of God. And that's amazing. You just need to live in certain places to see it literally. Okay? Well, there is a ministry. I don't know what's the name of this girl in South Africa. She has a... Ina Richards? Yeah, I guess is she. Ina? Ina Richards? Well, she has a ministry where she... Well, I guess the purpose of the ministry is to help people to have a Christian ethic for work and to be successful at work, especially poor people. But she says it is not a matter of training. You have to break the bondage of poverty because they've been slaves of the devil. And she says, and she starts a group of questions that are just, well, I got scared when I heard it. But she says, I have to face the man and ask him, why you don't have a job? Why are you unable? And things like that. She has a strong character, and it's amazing. But the first thing he does is she acknowledges that this man has been serving the devil, has been in slavery. Probably it was produced when he was a little child, but it doesn't matter. He has to acknowledge that he has to escape from that state. That's redemption. You see? Have you seen people who have nice jobs, but they are slaves of the devil? In some ways. He says a lot of, it talks about this very much. So we have to, as I tell you again, we have to change our theology of sin. Because in the end, the gospel means that we fight against, the hosts that want to take governance over mankind in many ways. And they do it through lies. Okay? But they finally get people in bondage. And that's the kind of narrative that we should try to do. It's not just, the man needs work, a job. Let's find a job for him. It's not exactly that. Okay, lies materialize. They get materialized through worldview and become part of the culture which we call the world. Okay, what Jesus called the world, what the apostles called the world. What's the world? The world is a group of people with a system of lies making a culture. We all were born, well, at least me, I was born in the world. So my Christian faith was always a struggle because I had to deal with many things that I had in the past. Breaking those things were sometimes a matter of much crying and praying to God to help me to leave those things, But the world is a place that tend to capture people, and to keep them in bondage. And they are in bondage. There are a lot of strongholds. But that's what we call the world. Yeah? Then worldviews don't change on their own or through time. Yeah, this is something we have to bear in mind too. Worldviews don't change on their own. Sometimes I guess it was, sometimes we are at the church, we're in church and someone gives his life to Jesus. That's great, but their worldview is still there. Most of it. You have to deal with that. Otherwise, you will see, I've seen some, again, because we're friends, I'm going to tell you this. I've seen some missionary organizations that come to a place like Bolivia. They evangelize the area, and they find themselves in the need to leave, and they need to leave someone in charge. And probably they leave in charge someone who is kind of the more faithful person during the period. But that's okay. It doesn't mean that he is in condition to take the thing. Because you have to be very careful to know if his worldview changed. Because worldviews don't change in time. Worldviews don't change by themselves. You purposely need to train a person until you can see that they have broken the chain of bondage, and their actions are different. That's because they come to church every Sunday and do those type of religion things. You just get marvelous and say, "Oh, this is a great Christian." Well, I doubt it. Even for myself. Really. And that's a big mistake, because once they leave, these guys do terrible things. Sometimes, I'm sorry. Okay, worldviews don't change by themselves. They need discipline. They need discipleship, okay? They need. Okay, so lies produce death. Those are things that we should think about. And I'm sorry, okay. What is a human being? What is a human being? There are two things that I like as a definition of human beings. The first one, I already said that, birds fly, fishes swim. What do human beings do?
Create.
They what?
Create.
Oh, that's a good one. Create, yeah, it's involved in it. What human beings do is they make decisions. That's our nature. Okay, that's one. And the other one is human beings materialize ideas. Okay, human beings materialize ideas. And if you see life, that's what it is. Everything you can see, comes from our minds, from our nature. We are creative, of course. We are creative. We create, we make things, sometimes amazing things, because that's our nature. Those things come from inside, no matter what. But if you get human beings working in a culture, you have to expect a civilization based on things that they have materialized. That's our nature. Of course, we can materialize evil. Yeah? And you have to work hard, I told you, to materialize evil, to materialize poverty. Poverty is not a state where people lack something. That's not true. Poverty is a state where people materialize misery. They materialize corruption. They materialize, things like that. Then you have poverty. And it's amazing all the things people can do to produce it. It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, then to materialize things is part of our nature. Okay? It's part of our nature. Because we human beings, we have two things. We have a mind and we have a heart. In my opinion, that's what makes us God's image. We have a mind and we have a heart. And both things working together, transcend and help our bodies to produce things. We can make songs, we can make machines, we can make clubs of people, we can make churches, we can make preachings, ideas, we can construct life. Things that are outside, but amazingly come from the inside. Okay, that's our nature. And if we have lies inside, what we come out will be that. So it's always a spiritual process. Okay? We materialize things. And lies in the worldview of people have the power to materialize a culture of death. Lie is a spiritual thing. It's spiritual. It comes from a spirit. And through our worldview, it gets materialized in a culture of death. Daryl Miller uses in his book this idea. Have you played with the lens that, captures the light and can fire a paper? Have you played with it? Well, that's a way of illustrating how things can be materialized. In material things becoming material things. Okay? So we have that power. Can you imagine that? So the Lord took a man and a woman. They were just naked. They had nothing. And the Lord told them, fill the earth. Fill it with wonderful things. Make music. Make buildings. Make inventions. Make all sorts of things. And we do. That's our nature. But we don't realize that. We always think that things move only in the material side. But that's not true. It comes from the inside. Okay? And if we materialize lies, the natural product is going to be that, oppression. For instance, if I believe that women have no value, if it's worse that they are the reincarnation of an evil man, well, what you're going to find is a culture of terrible things, but it gets materialized. Oppression, If I believe that this man has no value or lesser value than this other man, and I give him more education to him or more opportunities, and I close the doors to this one, I will produce injustice. Right? But that comes from that basic idea. And sometimes from ideas that we don't even think that we have them very deep inside of us. Okay? Do you agree with what I'm saying? Can you get the idea, grasp the idea? So cultures are that. It's interesting. We talk about cultures, and so we sometimes think that they are just innocent things, nice things, I don't like when people say, oh, wow, but it's okay if they are poor, because that's their culture, It's colorful. Yes, it's colorful, but, there are many evil things sometimes inside of a culture that are being materialized. There are good things too, There are good things too. One day, I get to meet, I had a very nice experience. I went to Paraguay, and when I was in Paraguay, I met a group of people who belonged to a tribe called the Ashes. The Ashes. And these Ashes are people who are very much used to body contact. So you don't stretch, you don't shake hands with them. They go directly and they will grasp you. Okay, but not this, but this, and won't let you go. And they will enjoy being with you. They will probably do this. Nice, you came, and they will, rub you. And you say, how come they are that way? And they suffer so much inside the jungle. They were exploited, they were killed, the children were taken away. They suffer so much, but at the same time, they are so tender, they're so marvelous. There was a church like this, and I was outside, and there was a place where I just listened in the preaching from outside, and there was one of these guys. He came and he subconsciously try to keep a distance, from people. If they're a bigger number, we get a little bit closer. But if we are just by ourselves, it's okay to a couple meters or something like that. But this guy was like that, and he was watching at me. And again. And when he came a little bit closer, I was the other way. And then he came closer, and happened what I was afraid to happen, because he touched my, and I was just uncomfortable. What can I do with this guy, And then he was this way, and he put his head on my shoulder. And, it was funny because I didn't know about them. Then the missionary who works with them came and explained me. And while we were talking, then I was surrounded of them, all of them hugging me, embracing me. And I went to visit them to the reservation where it was amazing to be there. But that's their culture. And you don't know how God gave them that. But it was beautiful. It was a nice experience anyway. And they were incredible, using the arrow and, and the arc. There was an incredible techniques they had to hunt. Okay, so we materialize things, our culture can materialize things through the culture, through our worldview. We build cultures, okay, that on the outside and that level are visible things, are material things, but you have to be clear on this. They are connected with their ideas. They are connected. Don't try to bring things in the outside new to them, because they won't accept it. Probably they won't adopt them well if you don't bring the idea. Right? That's why some people just wasted their money trying to do things that they just simply are not their own, Okay. Truth produces life. We have repeated this many times. Humanity under sin can't know the truth, which comes only through revelation. Okay, thanks God for the Bible. We as human beings in sin, we cannot realize truth by ourselves. God has to bring it to us, And we have to embrace truth and make it our worldview. Then it will produce life. But it's not our choice. Okay? It's not in us to do it. That's why it has to be imposed sometimes. It has to be imposed. You have to teach your children, to educate them, to make a discipline of that. Because you as a human being, you are not able to say, oh, this is God's truth. I will live it by myself. That's doesn't work that way. Okay? Maybe later. A biblical worldview produces redemption. Yeah, produces redemption. It's also made by redemption. I mean, there are some things that you can do. For instance, the Bible talks a lot about compassion. Jesus said, love your neighbor, love your neighbor. Loving your neighbor not always is just some nice things to do, but there are some sacrificial things to do. But let me tell you something. When we do discipleship, don't put your eyes too much in the end. Put your eyes in the process. The process is very important, you know. We believers mostly go to church to ask God products. Lord, I need money. Lord, I need this. Lord, I need that. Help me, please. We ask for finished products. What God wants to give us are processes, because God is glorified in the process. And God produced the knowledge of God in the process, not when you get the final product, okay? So this man, Schindler, had to go through all that way, you know? And in the end, when things change, whether he was a believer or not, he got the knowledge of God. He maybe do not confess Jesus, but he is more Christian than many people, because the process is the one that gives you the power, the strength, the experience, and you get to know God through a process. Okay? This is very important. I don't know why people go to church and we make a kind of idolatry out of that, asking for things. It's too much paganism. You know, God is the author of life. And everything has to be constructed. So it's a process. So if he gives you the money to start, that's fine. If you are faithful with that, the next step will come. But you have to be faithful in the process. And in the end, you will say like the Apostle Paul, I ran a lot, but it was not me. God did it. But I ran a lot, but it was not me. It was God. But I ran a lot, but it was not me. It was God. He sees that he and God together finally got to the end. But the process is very important. Okay? Why did I say this? Biblical worldview produces redemption. Redemption comes in the process. Redemption comes in the process. In the Pentecostal Evangelical Church, there is a mistake. I put my hands on someone, and this person will have such an incredible experience. Next time, he's a new person. That's not true. You'll see it. Even having strong experiences, you still need to work many things manually. Okay? So, for instance, compassion. Many people need to be trained in compassion, sacrificial compassion, love your neighbor. Oh, do I have to do that? But it takes time, right? You're right. Boy, it's a lot of money. Yes, maybe more. It is. Because if it's free and it's just 5 minutes, nothing will change. And in the process, you get what the Lord wants to do, and you yourself will be a different person at the other side. It's always redemption. You have to remember that. Redemption. Okay? Then, next thing is truth produces biblical prosperity only when it becomes part of our worldview. John 10:10. Maybe we have to talk about a little bit more about biblical prosperity. I told you biblical prosperity is not money. Probably money is one of the most evil things you can find in life, although, praise God, we don't misuse it. But money is really dangerous, really, really dangerous. Biblical prosperity is something you have to see in God's design for life. And it requires us to go to Genesis, for instance, and to see how God has made life, to realize all the different things that are part of life and that we need to develop. You know, when we talk about biblical prosperity, we are not talking about just getting money, but we are talking about, we may take our life level higher, but it's not just us. We go, that's why, because I love my neighbor, we all go together. You know, we all go together. There is much more to earn when we all go together as a body, you know, than just getting rich and then I'll see who deserves a little bit more here or there. That's not the idea. And think about this. When God created man, you know, in the beginning in the Bible, the first thing God did is to bless him, to bless man and women, to bless them. To bless them means that he wants the greatest thing for them. I mean, all my plans for you, I want them to be realized. They want to be done. So I will take care of that. That's what God did with them. And the first word he tells man is, be fruitful. Be fruitful. Think about this. Be fruitful. What does it mean to be fruitful? Have you read those verses? Probably you did, but you never stopped and tried to think about that. What does it mean to be fruitful? What is it? Being fruitful means that, like a tree, that you go from a little seed and you need first to grow. So growing, seeing kids growing, is biblical prosperity, part of biblical prosperity. So they grow, and while they grow, what happens? Happens that all the great things that God gave them as skills, as gifts, are being developed. Some of them for music, probably. Some of them for science. Some of them for simple things. It doesn't matter, you know? And then they will reach the fullness of their lives when everything is developed, you know, and we all share our fruits together. You for me, me for you, in a kind of system, but that will bring us all to prosperity. Now, it is important that every person can go that way. You know, once in a while, I find a person who is not growing and is looking for God's help, you know, because he needs money, he needs a job. It's very common. And I say, did you go to school? Yeah, I did. What happened? I didn't finish because this or that. And I say, well, that's going to be hard. You have to go back and continue where you left it. You know, mostly that is an amazing advice. Maybe simple, but it's amazing. You know why? Because God's will is, for this man, is to be fruitful. I mean, you say that's the natural part of life. Yeah, but you cannot make a spiritual life if your natural life is a mess. Okay? It is very important for you to be a nice Christian, but to be a fruitful person, because that's what God always wants to do. I mean, let me put this in the right place. Okay? I mean, the whole of your life is this, that you get to be fruitful. You can do many things, but if you are not fruitful, you didn't make it, honestly. You have to be fruitful. God created man. It's like have you ever done, I don't know, a toy? I remember when I was a kid, I made a toy by myself. This was a kind of submarine. It was wonderful. It was my masterpiece, you know. I used to take it everywhere to say, did you see this? Have you seen this? You know? I think about God being so delighted by his own creation. And he made man. I guess all the angels were around him when he was breaking the plastic thing and taking man out, you know? And God was, you know, think about you are constructing a plane, small plane. It has the engine, everything. You made everything wonderful. Then you got the remote control in your hands. And the engine is right there. It's, all the propellers are working and ready to fly. And you want to tell it one word. What would you tell it? What would you do? Tell it. Fly! You know, because that's the reason you made it. You know why God made man? What's the reason he had in his heart? The greatest thing he wanted man to do is to be fruitful. So that's the first word God speaks to man. And it's just like that. So, in your natural life or spiritual life, no matter how you want to see it, the best thing a person can do is to pursue the realization of God's plan for his life, what he meant for him to be. And you will hardly be a person, what I mean is sometimes we think that when going to church and becoming very spiritual and doing great things like that is going to be something that will excuse you for not being fruitful. Okay? What God wants you, no matter what, is to become fruitful. So, the first line of a life of faith is to pursue that. And while you do it, God will be with you. The Lord don't need us to be, to put our side too far. He only tells us, be faithful this day, only this day. Tomorrow will be another day. But today, if you have to study math, do it as unto me. Because man was supposed to be fruitful as unto God, as a child who wants to please his mother or his father. And if you do it every day, you will see how God makes amazing things in your life. You don't need him to do it in the big campaign or in the church, just in your studies. But I'm going to finish high school. I like to go to college. I don't have money. Don't worry about that. That's not your concern. That's God's concern. Because he's the one who's asking you to do that, and he bless you. He will open the doors in ways you will never imagine. And it's always an adventure. I had this friend, he's a pastor, he's a young pastor. One day we were in his living room watching a video about Christians doing nice things, and he was weeping. And I said, what's going on? And he said, you know what? I come from Guatemala. My pastor is a pastor of 10,000 people. He's a wealthy man. And he told me, go to that city and open a church. I will support you. And I have come with my family. I have opened the church. But 6 months later, no one comes in. I've done everything. I put music. balloons everywhere, but nobody comes in, nobody's interested. So I decided to pray. One of those days I was tired about this, and I began to pray, and I said, Lord, this is it. You have to answer me now, but now, today, if I am a pastor or not. Today, now. And when he was saying now, somebody knocked the door. That's a sense of humor, really. And they stopped his prayer, and he went to open the door. And when he did, there was this group of very poor people, but a bunch of them, who said, we are looking for Pastor Jose Calderon. And he said, I am. Praise God! We found you. The Lord guide us to come with you. And he was just praying, asking God if he was a pastor. But just wait. And I said, and then what? My problem is that those are the poorest people I've seen in my life. And I don't know what to do with them. I'm not prepared to do that. And I said, yeah, you're right, you're not prepared. But at least what I think is that you are not going to live from them, they are going to live from you. So don't ask them money and nothing like that. But what can I do? I don't know. He was a poor man too. And I said, well, I don't know, at least give them an example of something. Help them to get something else in life. And I asked him, for instance, you finished high school? He said, yes, I did. Something else? No, that's it. And in Guatemala, that was enough at that time. Would you like to have higher studies? Oh, yeah, I wish I had. What would you like to do? I like to study computers. And why don't you go and do it? But I am a pastor. Yeah, but you have brains, right? Some people think that the spiritual life, to devote your life to the spiritual things mean you have to abandon God's main purpose for your life. And that's a big mistake. And I told him, look, I can help you. In this organization, we can give you half time of a job if you go to a small university that was there. They teach computers. Came some days later and said, if you help me, I'll do it. Okay, let's do it. He went, he got registered and all that. Okay, and he began to work in my office. And then he came one day and he was sitting there in front of me. He said, this is my first day of college or university. And how was it? Well, the first thing is I'm the oldest one in the room. Everybody's young. Well, that's okay, no problem, never late. Then the first teacher came in, and what happened? He used to be my friend at school. We sit together in the same age. And he saw me and said, what are you doing here? And I was really sad, telling him that I got behind in life because I became a pastor. And there's something in Latin America that is very common in this sense. And I always tell people that if your pastor has not completed his education, if I were you, I wouldn't follow him. And this is a very honest advice. And if he can do it, and if he doesn't do it, don't follow him. Because we should always show people that we are growing, that we can give more fruits in many ways. We live in exciting times. Even watching YouTube, you can learn many things. That was not in my time, but just watching YouTube, you can do amazing things, so there's no excuse. Well, time passed, and he came one day and said, we got our grades. And how was that? And he said, I'm the best student in my class. Oh, great. Keep going. Next thing he came and said, I'm the best student in the whole university. I said, wonderful, you see? And everybody loves him. And when teachers come and talk against God, I just jump in the conversation, and because I'm a grown-up man, I just fight against that, and everybody likes it. And I say, yeah, that's great. The next thing is that he comes and tells me, you know what? Every night I sit in my bed and I'm on the little table, making my homework because I don't have time during the day. And all of a sudden the door opened. And I got scared because I thought it was. Then my 2 children came in and said, Dad, we have seen that you are going back to your studies. And we have thought about why don't we compete each other and see who is the best student in the year. And he said, yeah, okay, come join me. And they were doing that. And another day, his wife was sleeping in the bed. She just jumped up and said, I'm tired. I see you are going back to school, and my father never educated me. I had only the 3rd year of primary school, so I want to study too. So he too joined the group, Next thing, he came to me and told me, I'm a proud pastor. Why? Because I knew there were many children who never went to school. And I took all of them and I put them in school. And I said, if you were not going to school, would you have done that? That's the first commandment. Be fruitful. Why do people just do everything except that? Your life won't work. Trust me, look for everyone who is in troubles. At least in my context, it works that way, exactly. Then he says, one of those days, he went to preach at his church, and there was a meeting. And he, was kind of scary. What was going on? And someone came and said, Pastor, when you finish your preaching, please, we want to talk to you. And he thought there was a big issue. And he said, well, I couldn't preach, very well, so I finished soon. And I went there and said, okay, what's the problem? And one of them stood up and said, Pastor, we have seen that you and your family are studying. And you are making all our children to go to school. And we all are illiterate people. But we want you to take the church and make a school here, and we all want to learn how to read and write at least, and if we can go further, we will go further. Think about this man who at the beginning didn't know if he was a pastor, and God was leading him without he knows. Become fruitful may be a long way to go, but it doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. The process is very important. And the Lord opens doors, talk to hearts, gives you the strength. And in some ways, he brings the resources to the way. But trust me, if you trust God in this process, He will never let you down. Never. But if you stop, then what He can do. You know what service means? We are servers. Do you understand the meaning of service? The Lord Jesus said, the one who in the kingdom of God, the one who has authority is the one who serves his brother. We don't understand that because we use our worldly paradigms. But serving someone is something very simple. It's helping them to reach their fullness in order to be fruitful. That's all. And that's what every parent do with their own children, you know. It comes from, the first assumption is, my child comes with a plan from God. You have to start that. You have to see every child that they say, God has a plan for you. God has a plan for you. God has a plan for you. This is a certainty. And it's plans of prosperity. And there are great news, but we need time and we need a process. But he cannot go there by himself. He needs someone to serve him to get there. So what do parents do? They change diapers, they make, the milk. But that's not the purpose to be a parent. Those are just little things that go along the way. But in the end, what you are doing is try to guide them to develop their highest, at certain moment. That's what you really want. I remember my son told me, Dad, I don't want to go to school. He was very little. He was suffering. And I said, son, you have to go. God has great things for you, but I don't really know what it is, honestly, but I know it's that way. That's true. And he said, okay, next time, Dad, I don't really want to go to school. Son, again. Okay. Next time he came and said, Dad, I won't go to school. Then I took my belt and said, okay, no problem. The thing is, who has the authority is the one who serves in the kingdom of God. It's not that you have the force. It means that God is supporting you in what you do. It means that. Because the authority is His, that's not yours. And what I do is, anything that goes aside and not in the plan, I have to stop it. So I'm serving until He finishes the road. He gives fruits. Then I did my job. You see? That is to serve others. It might be about bringing coffee, doing that, doing this, but the main thing is what you are focused about, and it's what you are going to get.